This is Miles Harrington, still broadcasting from Echo 9, still listening to a planet that no longer speaks in the language we once knew. Last night, something moved beneath the ridge. Not a quake, not a jolt, no warning, no aftershock. It was slower, deeper, like the earth exhaled through clenched teeth. A long pressure, then release. The instruments didn't catch it, but I felt it through the soles of my boots, standing outside the station before dawn. No birds, no sky crackle, just silence so full it felt like pressure. It's not seismic, it's something else, and it wasn't localized. The glacier shifted half a meter without cracking, as if the foundation beneath the crust no longer cared to hold shape. And that's what terrifies me more than any tremor. We used to call them micro slips. Now we're calling them preludes. But this isn't music. It's entropy with a rhythm. The kind you can't chart anymore because the charts have nothing left to offer. I think we're nearing what we didn't believe could happen in our lifetime. Crust break, not collapse, not erosion. Break, a vertical rupture from mantle to bone, not from pressure, but from imbalance. The earth is tired of holding us, and I am starting to think we were warned, only we didn't know how to listen. Professor Saito used to say, the earth dreams in heat and pressure, and when it cannot sleep, it changes shape. He called it core insomnia, not as science, but as poetry. He said it like a warning disguised as wonder. He taught us in a classroom built on a fault line. We build where we should not, he'd say, because we pretend the ground beneath us is loyal. I didn't understand it then, but I remember the look in his eyes when he read the data from Kamchatka, like he was watching an old friend start to forget his name. He died in his lab during the Cascade failures in Tokyo. That's what the final record says. But I think he died long before, when the first magnetic quiet zones spread across the crust like bruises. Sometimes I imagine him sitting beside me here, staring at the gauges, listening to the frequency hum. No words, just the shared knowing. The earth has been sleepless too long, and now it is restless in ways that don't fit our models, and the ghosts of those who listened hardest are starting to whisper back. There was an aurora this morning, violet, flickering in and out like it didn't belong. Daylight auroras are no longer rare. They're just unwelcome, like reminders that what shields us is thinning quicker than the world wants to admit. The southern hemisphere is gone from our grid. No response from McMurdo. Satellite pings only bounce once now, then die in the dark. Magnetic fields are fracturing like glass under heat, not disappearing, just drifting. Fragments of order in a widening sea of static. The poles have been migrating for years, but now they move like they're chasing something or fleeing it. I've switched all transmissions to low band AM. It carries further in collapse, and it sounds lonelier. Maybe that's why I trust it. Filtered water is running low. Geothermal vents are inconsistent. What used to be reliable pressure shifts now come with microgas bursts. Sometimes the vents hiss without heat, like breathing through a collapsed lung. I keep waiting for the sky to make a sound, but it never does. It just burns quietly, like it's ashamed. It came through at 3:17. One burst, 5 seconds, then silence. Morse, fragmented, garbled, but the pattern was deliberate, too spaced for interference. I played it back 5 times, ran it through the old filters, even used Saito's outdated frequency deciphering patch. The signal wasn't from above. It echoed up, faint tonal drift, signature reflection delay consistent with subterranean bounce, deep, maybe mantle deep. There's no record of any active stations in that band. Not since the last geothermal hub failed in Patagonia. That drill site was abandoned after it flooded during the permafrost sink. No one's been there in 4 years. And yet, the burst read /////////////////////// and then silence, as if the sender reconsidered finishing the sentence. I've always said we send signals not to reach others, but to remind ourselves we still exist. But this feels different, as if the planet itself is reaching back, not in language, in rhythm, repetition, tone. I don't know what's below anymore. We used to call it solid. Now, I think we were only naming our ignorance. If there's something alive beneath the crust, maybe it's not biological. Maybe it's something older. Memory, pressure, pattern, something waiting. There used to be a language in the ice, a creaking, moaning dialect. Pressure speaking to pressure, old weight shifting beneath old bones. If you stood still, it would rise through your boots and into your blood. The glacial shelf groaned like a creature remembering its name. But now, it doesn't speak. The ridge to the east of Echo 9 has fallen still. No shifting, no stress releases, no whispers from deep beneath. The monitors haven't recorded a tremor in 5 days. That would have been unthinkable a year ago, here where tectonic voices never truly go quiet. I stood out there this morning, just stood, waited for something, anything. The wind moved across the surface, but the ground was mute. Not calm, not dormant, just unwilling. We used to believe silence meant safety, but this is a hush that holds its breath, a stillness that waits for the next fracture. The crust isn't transferring force anymore, it's hoarding it. That's the most dangerous part, not the shaking, but the waiting. Energy has nowhere to go. Faults that once trembled in warning now bear the weight in silence. It's as if the earth is folding its arms, not in anger, in finality. And I've learned to fear the quiet more than the roar. I received a handwritten letter from Yulia 6 months before the grid broke down, a seismologist out of Novosibirsk, sharp, meticulous, always asking questions others ignored. She wrote it on real paper, ink. Her words seemed to bleed, even before the page weathered. "It's not a quake, Miles," she wrote. "It's slippage. The earth isn't shaking. It's letting go." I didn't understand at the time. We were still measuring tremors like they meant something. But she saw what was coming. She noticed the plate boundaries weren't acting like boundaries anymore, more like zones of surrender. Yulia was tracking a new type of seismic event. No epicenter, just slow, lateral movement. Long, quiet breaks beneath crust that had lost interest in fighting back. She said the mantle was leaking information, that the structure of the planet had become forgetful, and when memory fades in the bones of a world, form follows. Her last sentence was short. If the earth forgets how to hold itself, so will we. I haven't heard from her since, but her voice lingers in these pages, like the echo of a scientist trying to reason with a planet already beyond reason. There was a man here, once, Jones. No last name, or maybe he just didn't bother telling us. He arrived on foot from the edge of the old Chilean corridor, pushing a rusted cart filled with salvaged solar panels and an old bicycle frame. He was a mechanic, the kind who fixed things not because they mattered, But because fixing things made him feel less broken, he built a pedal-powered generator the first week. Laughed the whole time. Said he was outpacing the end of the world one crank at a time. He made us coffee from boiled moss water and played old jazz through a tape deck he wired with fishing line and stubbornness. Jones didn't talk much about the world before. Said memory was useful but not necessary. What mattered was light, motion, the sense that something was turning, even if it was only the pedals under your feet. He's gone now. No final words, no note. Just the empty chair and the silent generator, still wired, still whole. Sometimes, when I'm alone in the transmission room, I sit in that chair, I press my feet against the pedals, and I wait for something, anything, to resist me. There's nothing now. The world no longer fights back, not even in metal, not even in muscle. The signal came just past midnight, low frequency, buried in the white noise like a whisper in a collapsing cathedral. Only one word. Downhole. Then a pause. Then nothing. No identifier. No source tag. No repeat transmission. Just the word, rattling through the static like a secret the earth accidentally confessed. I ran it against every archive I have. Old mining codes, deep sea relay protocols, abandoned drill site tags, no match. But the word itself, it's old field slang, downhole. The point below the drill head where pressure builds, where tools fail, where things are supposed to be dead quiet. Only it wasn't quiet. I think something is still awake beneath us. Maybe not conscious, maybe not even living, by the terms we once used. But active, patterned. Aware, in the way a fault line waits or a fever breaks. The earth is muttering, and we've only just begun to understand the words. Her name was Aya. She was 8 years old when she arrived at Echo 9, carried in the arms of a man too thin to be called strong, but too stubborn to fall before she did. They came from what was once northern Brazil, through the dry veins of a world that used to bleed green. Her eyes were too quiet for her age, her smile too rare. But when it came like a sunrise breaking through soot. She liked to sit near the greenhouse. The algae tanks are dead now, but back then they still pulsed with slow, luminous life. She called them the breathing windows. She said they looked like jellyfish learning to sing. Aya lasted 19 days. The black ash started on the 15th. Fine at first, then thicker, clinging to skin, settling in lungs like memory that refuses to leave. We'd rigged filters, but not for that. Not for the invisible metals riding wind from fractures far below. Not for the bone dust of ancient stone turned airborne. She coughed blood on the 17th, slipped into sleep on the 18th, stopped on the 19th. We buried her in the moss bed behind the greenhouse, wrapped in thermal fabric. No ceremony, just a hush and a promise that she would be remembered by someone still listening. I speak her name now because names matter, because memory resists collapse. Her name was Aya, and the sky took her, but she left something behind. The ash is no longer volcanic. It's something new, something made in the lungs of the planet, not coughed, but exhaled. Subcrustal events are becoming more frequent, not eruptions, inversions, mantle gases forced upward through ruptured seams, superheated rock degassing into air before it can cool. It rides the thermals, travels far beyond the fracture zones, and it carries more than dust. Vanadium, arsenic, unbound iron, crystalline silica in forms we haven't studied because the earth never gave them to us before. The old atmosphere used to eat them, scrub them clean in clouds and oceans, but now The clouds are sparse, the oceans are warm, and the wind just carries and carries. There's a concept we never used outside of agriculture: soil fatigue, a state where Earth can no longer hold or sustain life. We were warned it might happen in farming belts. We didn't think it could happen globally. We didn't think the entire surface could sour. But Aya's grave has already sunk. The moss is brittle around it, not from frost, from something deeper, a sickness rising through sediment like regret. I wonder if burial means anything now, if the ground beneath us still understands its part in the cycle, because some mornings when I step outside, I feel like the earth is forgetting how to hold even the dead. Aya drew before she died. With charcoal and old plant pulp, she made images on scavenged plastic and cold paper. Most were shapes, wind lines, circles, patterns no one taught her. But there's one drawing I've kept. I taped it to the transmitter. It hangs there now, fluttering slightly in the heat vent's sigh. It shows a green field, impossibly vibrant, a blue sky, wrong in its clearness, and above it all, 3 suns. Not stars, not moons. 3 suns, radiating unevenly, one large and gold, one small and red, one fading to white. I don't know what it means. Maybe she saw something in her final fever, or maybe she imagined what the world looked like before we kept records, before the dust, before the grids, before we asked the earth to behave. Some of the others thought it was nonsense, but I've stared at it for hours, days. Sometimes I think the drawing isn't memory or prophecy, but a request, a question posed by someone too small to articulate it aloud. Could something else come next? And I've come to believe that maybe it can. Not a return, not a repair, but a reimagining, a new geometry for light. 3 suns in a child's hand, held not in knowledge, but in hope. The source of the downhole signal is real. I triangulated it late last night using the last stable relay node, Patagonia, an abandoned drill shaft once part of the geothermal initiative. Project Caldera, Phase 3, decommissioned when the pressure vectors inverted. They said it flooded, that the equipment corroded within days, that the shaft was sealed, buried beneath miles of cooling basalt. But the coordinates match, and the frequencies too precise to be accidental. I can't explain how. The station logs say that relay's dead, no battery left, no transmitter intact, but something is still humming. Something inside that hole is reaching upward, not screaming, not warning, just repeating, whispering through strata and static. And now I wonder, was it ever about energy extraction? Or were we listening in the wrong direction? I've marked the signal on the board. There's no one left here to investigate, and I won't make it there. Not without power, not with the vents irregular and my lungs shortening their patience, but the shaft remembers, and memory, in places we once pierced and then abandoned, is starting to speak. I'll keep listening. Before all this, before the broadcasts and the ash, before even the satellites began to die quietly, in orbit, there was the Kola Super Deep, a Russian experiment, a hole drilled over 7 miles into the crust, the deepest artificial point we ever made. But what they found wasn't oil, wasn't gas, wasn't even rock the way they expected it. They found sound. Low-frequency resonance, not quite seismic, not quite harmonic. They logged it as non-tectonic vibrations. Some called it Earth's breath. Others called it a myth. But I've heard the tapes. The original real recordings, uncompressed, uncleaned. There was something there, A tone that didn't just echo, it pressed, as if it were trying to remind you that pressure isn't just physical. It can be spiritual, temporal, like memory, but made of weight. I remembered that hum yesterday, when the signal flared again. Same tone, same spine-sinking frequency. It's not broadband. It doesn't scatter. It tunnels, straight up through strata, as if the planet itself has chosen a direction to speak. There's a reason we stopped drilling that deep. Not because we couldn't go farther, but because we didn't like what we heard. Back then, we thought the danger was collapse. We never guessed it might be conversation. And maybe the Earth was listening longer than we were. I've been tracking the pattern of the hum. It's not static, it's structured. Not in the way language is, but in the way weather is, in the way tide is. I overlaid it with early Paleolithic seismic traces. Not data, just spectrogram artifacts stored in the UN Geological Archives. They match, not in waveform, but in rhythm, the pulse of something older than syntax, a resonance that predates memory, even in stone. Imagine sound that doesn't speak, but insists, repeats until biology conforms to it, until thoughts start to beat in time with what's beneath you. It's not hostile. It's not welcoming either. It's inevitable, like gravity, or fire, like hunger. I don't think we're hearing a signal in the conventional sense. I think we're intercepting presence, a form of being that doesn't need words because it never needed to be heard. Not until now. The Earth isn't just destabilizing, it's vocalizing. And we're the ones who unearthed the frequency, not with microphones, with fracture, with pressure, with time. And now that it's begun, I don't know if we're supposed to listen or respond. The signal has grown louder, not just in volume, but in character. What began as a hum is now pulsing, irregular at first, then rhythmic, like a breath too slow for lungs. Like a heartbeat too large to fit in anything we understand as alive. I've tuned it across multiple bands. The pulse doesn't change pitch, but it changes depth. Layers. Harmonics buried like veins in the sound, each tone colliding gently with the one before it. Not noise, cadence. It feels deliberate, and it's begun to affect the equipment. The analog meters flicker when it peaks. The backup batteries drain faster when the pulse grows close. I know that makes no sense, but I also know what interference feels like. This isn't interference. This is atmosphere, reacting to presence. A long time ago, we believed in gods beneath the earth, titans, beasts of myth sleeping in the magma. But maybe what they sensed wasn't myth. Maybe they just didn't have instruments, just fear, just wonder. And now I wonder too, because the more I listen, the more it sounds less like geology and more like something waking up. This morning, the tone shifted again, not in pitch, in structure. The rhythm began to break, not collapse, but variation, a kind of rearrangement. Like breath turning to syllable, the difference between a gasp and a word. I ran it through the last linguistic parsing tool we salvaged from the communications hub. It flagged 3 possible phonemes, not actual words, but the shapes of words. The skeleton of language forming inside the pulse. It shouldn't be possible. Pressure patterns don't mimic speech. But the software insists something in the waveforms matches old Indo-Aryan roots, early sound shapes once used for divinity, for darkness, for calling. I don't think it's learning from us. I think it always had the ability to speak. It just never had the need. But we drilled. We ruptured. We scarred. And maybe, just maybe, it took that as a question. Maybe this is an answer. I don't know what it wants, or if it wants. But what terrifies me isn't that we've awakened something. It's that we may be part of what it already was. That human history is just one note in something deeper, older, louder, and now, for the first time, the earth isn't just shifting, it's speaking back. This is Miles, still recording, still receiving, and still unsure which voice is mine anymore. It started just before dawn, a sharp crack, not like thunder, not like quake, something sharper, cleaner, as if the planet had drawn a blade across itself. The Ross Ice Shelf is gone now. Split, not melted, not eroded, split. A fault line opened beneath it, a line the width of memory. And when it broke, it didn't fracture into pieces. It liquefied. Steam rose like ghosts. Jets of it, columns howling as they escaped the sudden birth canal between ocean and mantle. I watched from the communications tower. I couldn't look away. The sea didn't roar. It hissed, furious, grieving. The ice didn't fall. It sagged, like muscle surrendering to an old wound. They used to call this place stable, the last blue frontier. But the crust below had been thinning for years. We just didn't want to measure what lay beneath. We told ourselves the shelf would hold. We always say that, don't we? That the ice will hold. That the walls will hold. That we will. The rupture wasn't loud. That's the strange part. It felt dignified, like a quiet ending for something ancient and tired. And now I sit here, watching steam curl through the glass, trying to understand what we saw. It wasn't just collapse. It was confession. The earth said, I can't hold this anymore. And then it let go. We've given it a name. CRUSTBREAK. Not just a quake. Not a rift. It's different. It doesn't run across the surface. It runs through it. Straight down. Like the earth has chosen a place to open itself. Like a pressure wound in the skin of the world. It begins as a tremor. Then a deep draw inward, as if the planet is bracing. Then the rupture, vertical, mantle to troposphere, a needle-thin shaft wide enough for breath to rise. And what breath it is, superheated carbon steam, methane from millennia-locked beds, hydrogen sulfide, and traces of xenoliths, fragments of mantle matter that should never be airborne. It vents into the sky with no flame, but with purpose. There's no controlling it, no capping it, no containing it. The rupture near Ross is now expanding. Satellite models, before we lost the last feed, showed atmospheric deformation directly above it. A kind of localized wobble, like the sky is trying to settle around a missing tooth. CRUSTBREAK is not a symptom. It's a sentence, not a punishment, but a conclusion. This is what happens when force has nowhere left to go. This is what happens when memory folds back on itself and erupts. This is the earth, writing its final geology in vertical scars. All this time, we thought the stillness was ours. That quiet skies meant peace. That tectonic sleep was a gift. But it wasn't ours to keep. We were borrowing the silence. And now the debt is being collected. There's something profoundly humbling in watching the world reclaim its voice. The kind of voice that doesn't use words. It uses pressure, heat, erosion, a slow unmaking of the neat lines we carved across her back. We mapped her, named her, owned her in pixels and paper. But the earth never signed the contract, never gave us permanence, only rhythm. I look back on those early maps now, when we still believed in borders and grids, in ownership and order. The arrogance of it stings in hindsight. We thought we had time. We thought the earth would wait. But she doesn't wait. She remembers. She reshapes. And maybe, just maybe, this isn't destruction. Maybe it's reclamation, a return to something that doesn't need to be saved because it never needed us to begin with. We were only visitors here, and we forgot to listen to the host. A message came through just before the sky turned red. Short burst, delayed packet, weak encryption, the kind we used before the satellites fell. I almost missed it, tucked in the lower bands, wrapped in ghost code. Green Sector 7, Reykjavik, still alive. They've rerouted an old geothermal shaft. One of the deep ones, post-volcanic, modified for water capture, thermal cycling, filtered agriculture. They called it the Hearth. No mention of how many are there, just that it holds and it warms. The signal was accompanied by a short vocal file. A woman, maybe late 40s, steady voice. She said, "We burn, but we breathe. If you receive this, send silence back. It means we're not alone." I haven't responded. Not yet. There's a kind of sacredness to their stillness. If I answer, I disturb it. But I've played it 10 times now. And every time I hear her say we breathe, something in me unclenches. Reykjavik still burns, but not in the way we've come to expect. Not as flame, not as warning, as warmth. In a world collapsing upward and inward, that single word, breathe, feels like a rebellion. Maybe the planet is shedding us. Maybe not all at once, but maybe, just maybe, not all of us are ready to be shed. I received a report from what remains of the Himalayan frequency chain, shortwave, broken in 3 places but stitched together long enough for the words to arrive. The message came from Langtang Valley, not a call for help, just a record, a statement. They said gravity failed, not metaphor, not panic, a failure. They described a tremor that didn't feel like a quake, more like the mountain breathing in, too deep, too slow, then holding the breath and forgetting to exhale. And during that pause, people lifted, not flight, not magic, just a lightness where there should have been weight. They rose inches from the stone, not all at once, but enough to unsettle faith, feet leaving the ground for no reason, then falling back down, knees shattering on impact. The old woman who sent the transmission used to be a cartographer. She said the moment reminded her of a map folding in the wrong direction, convex where it should have been flat. She called it a vertical betrayal. The earth no longer holds us the way it used to. Something deep inside has shifted, not sideways but inward, redistributing mass, rearranging consequence. I don't think it was an isolated event, just the first one that was recorded. And now I find myself waiting to feel it here, to feel that lifting, that moment of betrayal, a reminder that even gravity is only a contract, and contracts break. Lena Das was a scientist, seismologist by training. She specialized in vibrational memory, how stress patterns in stone carry echoes of past quakes. She believed the earth remembered its pain, tracked it, documented it, whispered it forward. Her final journal was recovered from K2, delivered by a Sherpa who walked 6 days without food, then collapsed at the edge of the Kalinchak Basin. The pages were damp, but intact. Lena died on the summit, alone. Her last entry, "There is no more movement, only drift. I can't feel the mountain anymore. I think it let go of me." She wrote of the silence, not the absence of sound, but the absence of tone. The loss of that faint, constant tremble that told her she was anchored. And then she wrote simply, "If I die up here, it won't be from cold. It will be from altitude no longer knowing how to press down." She was right. Her body wasn't found. Just the notebook, just her words. And I carry them now in my pocket, folded beside Aya's drawing. Lena died closer to the sky than any of us, but in her notes, she left something more than data. She left witness, the kind that doesn't beg for answers, just remembrance. We are taught from childhood that gravity is a constant, that it binds us, grounds us, keeps us from flying apart. But gravity is not a law. It's a consequence, and like all consequences, it can be changed if the balance it arises from begins to fail. I've been reading the last coherent geophysical models, before the networks collapsed, before the data streams turned to noise. They showed a redistribution of mass beneath the Western Pacific. Not loss, not gain, movement, deep lithospheric instability, a kind of sideways unspooling, like tension unwinding from an old reel, each rotation slower and more uncertain. The crust isn't breaking because it's thin. It's breaking because the base beneath it is shifting. The planet is adjusting its load, realigning centers, and gravity, poor obedient thing, follows. And so it fails. Not everywhere, not yet. But in places where the lines were already tired, mountain ranges, trench zones, places where stone was asked to bear too much for too long. This isn't supernatural, it's structural. The Earth's shape defines its pull, and if the shape begins to soften, to uncoil, so too does the grip. We are not falling up, we are being released. And I can't help but wonder, was gravity the last kindness the Earth gave us? And if so, what does it mean when even kindness lets go? I don't know how much time I have left. Not in the grand poetic sense. I mean power, battery, heat, breath. All of it now counts in hours, not days. But I keep recording because I've come to believe that survival may not mean staying alive. It may mean leaving, something that listens after you stop speaking. This broadcast, this whisper through static, this rhythm of words across dead frequencies, maybe it's not for anyone. Maybe it's just to prove I was here, that we were, that the Earth didn't fail without someone bearing witness. We used to archive data for future generations. Now we archive to remember ourselves, to hold the line between silence and forgetting, to mark that we mattered, not in history, but in resonance. If no one hears this, it still happened. If someone does, you are not alone. Not entirely. This is Miles Harrington. Still broadcasting, still here, still human. It came through in the blue hour. That strange stillness between night's last breath and the day's first regret. The transmission was faint, buried beneath ion scatter, and what's left of the global relay haze. I thought it was another looped error, an old diagnostic bleed-off from some broken repeater. But then I recognized the data structure, the packet signature. It came from Station 39M Mount Sorrow. That station was lost 20 years ago, decommissioned, folded under glacial retreat and a slow landslide no one thought worth documenting. No power, no backup cell, no beacon, nothing. But the signal was unmistakable. Low-frequency telemetry matched line for line with today's core temperature instability reports. No deviations, not approximations, duplicates, precise atmospheric drift vectors, mantle expansion coefficients, down to the decimal point. The data is now, but the voice was then. A calm voice. Male. No identification. Reading the values with the kind of weary discipline that only the lonely carry. The way I read mine now. I listened 5 times. Cross-checked against archived logs. The message was originally broadcast in October 2027. He said, If this is heard, it means the event has restarted. If the heat is rising again, you must not mistake it for anomaly. It is rhythm, and then static, then silence. There were no records of any transmission like this. And yet, here it is, arriving as if it always knew when we'd need to hear it. Sometimes, I wonder if we misunderstood the nature of time on this planet. Maybe it's not a line. Maybe it's a wound. And maybe it bleeds both ways. I've been thinking about folds, about memory. Not mine, the planet's. We believe time moves forward because the clocks we built insist on it. But clocks lie. Ask anyone who's waited for rescue. Ask the dead, if you can. The earth remembers differently. In magnetism, in mineral shift, in subtle deviations of stress deep below. There are scars beneath the crust that hum even now with the tremble of events long past. What if the planet doesn't move through time? What if it recurs through it? That signal, the one from Mount Sorrow, shouldn't exist. But what if it's not a transmission at all? What if it's an echo, not of sound, but of event? A memory so powerful it demands reenactment. Magnetic echoing was once theory. Feedback loops inside the field, bouncing data through chaotic resonance. But now I think there's more. The deeper collapse cuts into this world, the more memory leaks from its core. Like heat from a fracture, we built over every scar. We never thought they'd remember us, but maybe the earth keeps a ledger, and when the pressure builds just right, it opens to that page again. The signal ended differently the sixth time I played it. Not with static, with a voice, software young, not data, not code, just a child reciting numbers, planetary measurements by the sound of it, elevation shifts, air density readings, magnetic deviations. The rhythm of it, it felt familiar. I checked the waveform, compared it to my archived recordings, and now I can't ignore it. It sounds like Aya. Not exactly, but the cadence, the quiet confidence, the rise in pitch when she names a number that used to scare her. It matches. It aches. But that's impossible. Aya never recorded anything. She barely spoke above a whisper when she was here. And yet, I've listened to that segment over and over. The syllables are warped by age and transmission decay. But the tone carries her. I don't know what this means. Whether someone is copying her voice, or if voice itself is something that echoes in the field. Like pressure, like pain. Maybe she's not speaking through time. Maybe time remembers her. Maybe time remembers all of us in ways we were never meant to hear. And maybe that's what this is. Not a signal. A remembrance. One the earth is choosing to share. I ended the loop. Turned the dial. Powered down the array. And yet, I can still feel it. Like the vibration of a voice that's already stopped, still echoing in the ribs. We used to believe we were the apex listeners, that the earth spoke in riddles, and we, clever creatures, translated it into science. But now I wonder, when we drilled, when we mapped, when we sent our signals deep into her bones, did something hear us? Did something wait? And now, as we collapse inward, not with rage but gravity's slow forgetting, I keep asking, if we are no longer the ones speaking, who is? This is Miles Harrington, still listening. Power's dropping, slowly like a candle giving in to its final pool of wax. The geothermal cell was never meant to last this long. We overestimated the pressure beneath us, or maybe underestimated how fast the earth would change shape. Vents that once hissed steady are now irregular, half gasping, like lungs collapsed under too much breath. As of this hour, the battery reads 4%, Enough for another transmission cycle, maybe two. No backup, no sun. The solar array was buried last week, under sulfur ash and silence. I've rerouted every remaining watt to this mic, this signal. The rest of Echo 9 has gone cold. The east wall cracked during the last ice fracture. I sealed it with thermal blankets and adhesive foam I found in the south corridor. Not elegant, not meant for permanence, but nothing is anymore. I haven't heard from Reykjavik again. Their last message hangs in the air, like a blessing left unanswered. We breathe. I play it back in the dark over and over. The warmth in that voice, the soft certainty, it makes the silence afterward bearable. Outside, the wind is thinner than I remember. Not gentler, just sparse, like the planet itself is learning how to whisper again. The transmitter flickers when the vents go quiet, like it's listening for something beneath even my voice. Maybe it is. Maybe there's something beneath the silence, a waiting hum just out of reach. This broadcast will likely be the last full one. After this, the mic may carry only static or less, a shell of sound, a breath without a body. But for now, I'm still here, still broadcasting. I've been trying to picture what remains, not the collapse. We've spoken enough about the breaking, but the after, the shapes that survive, when maps no longer matter. Imagine forests without names, not reclaimed, simply unspoken, trees no longer measured, canopies that stretch without being called anything at all, oceans that move without lanes, no borders, no patrols, just water rising and falling like it always has, untethered from shipping routes and political tides, deserts redrawn by the wind, mountain ranges now islands. Shorelines change so many times they forget where they began, the earth returning to a language older than ours, one spoken only in pressure, in erosion, in bloom. Cities won't be ruins, not really. There'll be patterns in the dust, metal bones, heat scars, places where we once thought permanence could exist, places where stories gathered and then faded. The children, if any are left, won't know the names we gave to things: Everest, Amazon, Pacific, New York, Moscow. They'll name what they see, what they feel. Maybe they won't name anything at all. Maybe they'll just move through the world like sound through air, unclaimed but still heard. We held so tightly to our labels, our flags, our lines on the soil, but in the end, none of them held. Only movement does, only rhythm, only change. And maybe that's what the earth was always trying to show us. There's something I've been thinking about, a thought that's been curling behind every word I've said for days now, maybe longer. What if this isn't the end? Not in the way we think about endings. Lights out, curtain closed, silence. What if what's happening is a note, a final chord, struck low and long, vibrating through fault lines in memory, not dissonant, not even tragic, just necessary. The earth has always been a composer, and we, humans, cities, nations, we were a melody. Brief, complicated, beautiful in places, dissonant in others. We crescendoed without listening. We accelerated without breath. Now the composer takes the last breath of the score, a soft decrescendo, letting the tension fade, letting silence settle into the margins. But that doesn't mean the song dies. It means this part ends, and another will begin, with new instruments, new rhythms, a slower tempo, fewer notes perhaps, but still music. Even now, as my voice wavers between voltage and vapor, I can feel it, the hum beneath the crust, the soft murmur of something continuing, the earth singing, not in spite of collapse, because of it. We were averse. The planet goes on composing, and if this transmission is received, if these words reach past the static, then maybe, just maybe, we are part of the next note. If you're hearing this, you are the afterword, not the footnote, not the closing bracket, but the voice that follows, the echo that answers, the breath that carries on after ours has stopped. This station is done. Echo 9 will fall quiet soon, not in defeat, but in rhythm. The battery is gone, the air is thinner, but the memory, the pressure remains. Take this voice, take this record, take these stories not as warnings, but as witness that we were here, that we listened, that even in the unraveling, we chose to speak. My name is Miles Harrington. I was a geologist, a broadcaster, a man, and for as long as I could, I sent sound into the dark, not to be found, but to be remembered. This is Echo 9, still broadcasting, still breathing. This is the last shell of sound.